In this video, I'm going to be talking about how I do the type of activism that I do, as well as my journey as an animal rights activist and how I got involved. I hope you enjoy listening to my journey, and I hope it inspires you to speak up for the most oppressed beings on this planet. I often get asked, how do you have the confidence to do what you do? I don't actually ever have an answer to this because it's something that just comes naturally to me. I don't ever feel like I need to build up any confidence to get out there and protest for animal rights. I was always the quiet and the shy kid in school, and I'm still a very quiet-natured person. I do have a side to me that is loud and outgoing, but I have to feel comfortable with the people that I'm around to be that way. So I guess in some ways it does seem odd that I'm able to just go out into public places and dress the way that I do and speak so loudly and confidently about animal rights. Even though I have always been a quiet-natured person, I have been fearless in many ways and confident within myself, which allows me to do what I do when I'm protesting. Many people say that they couldn't do what I do, and that includes many passionate animal rights activists. My response to this is, you can do anything that you put your mind to. I understand that many people experience things such as social anxiety, which holds them back from being able to do direct action protesting. And that's why it's so great that there are various forms of activism suited to different people. So you might be wondering how I got to where I am now as an animal rights activist. So how did it all begin? Well, it started as a new vegan in 2017 when I had the opportunity to see Joey Carbstrong speak live here in Perth. Joey was talking about how earlier that day they went to a pig slaughterhouse and did a vigil witnessing pigs in horrific conditions and hearing them scream inside the carbon dioxide gas chambers, which is all legal standard industry practice. When Joey was explaining this experience, there were two things running through my mind. The first one was, wow, I can't believe there's slaughterhouses so close to here. How naive I was. And the second question that was running through my head was, I wonder how all of these activists met to go out to a slaughterhouse and do what they did. Joey's inspiring speech led me to begin the search of how to find local animal rights groups. I began searching and came across two international animal rights groups, which is Anonymous for the Voiceless and the Save Movement. These animal rights groups are international, so it is likely you can find your local chapters in the area that you live in. If you can't, you can reach out to them and create your very own chapter. The Cube of Truth is where activists stand in a cube formation holding television screens that are displaying animal cruelty footage. Meanwhile, other activists are on the outside who are engaging and outreaching with the public to question their lifestyle choices and make them become aware of the inherent animal cruelty that their lifestyle choices are contributing to. I remember feeling very nervous when I did my first Cube of Truth demonstration here in Perth. Soon after becoming a regular participant in the Cube of Truth demonstrations, I did my very first The Save Movement action in 2018. We gathered outside a cow slaughterhouse 2 hours outside of Perth. It was an extremely confronting experience seeing cows crammed in confined spaces in trucks on a well over 40-degree day. Later that year in 2018, shortly after returning from a trip in South America, I returned to find out that a chapter of Direct Action Everywhere had been created for Perth. I recall the day where one of their very first protests was going to happen. That day I was at a Cube of Truth, and I remember talking to the other activists, asking them if they were going to go to the protest. I remember saying that I really wasn't sure about going, and in the end I didn't go. Later on, I found out that their protest was a restaurant disruption, and it received a huge amount of media attention and a lot of negative backlash because of that. I remember feeling really glad that I didn't go because as an outsider, all I could see was a lot of negative reactions to this disruption. And how very wrong I was to have that assumption. And I'm so glad that I remained open-minded, and soon after I did my first Direct Action Everywhere protest. This protest was a Christmas event where we went inside a supermarket to do a speak out, and we also displayed the dead body of a piglet that was found in a local piggery. The more direct action protesting that I did, the more passionate and driven I became as an animal rights activist. I started to see a lot of good change, media story after media story. There was certainly a lot of social change happening in Perth. Over a short period of time, a lot more people were beginning to listen to what we had to say, and so many more people were taking the animal rights message seriously. So this was just a step closer in the direction that I headed to become the activist that I am today. I remember the very first time I did a speak out, and it was totally unprepared for, and I just had no idea that I was going to do it until I was in that moment. So this was actually an outreach event that we were doing at an RSPCA dog walk, and the aim was to hand out pamphlets and educate people on the horrors of the animal agricultural industries that RSPCA is approving. RSPCA claims to be an animal welfare organisation. However, they approve horrific animal cruelty practices such as putting pigs into carbon dioxide gas chambers where they suffocate to death. During this protest, I decided to do a live stream of the event, and in the live stream, I began talking about all these horrors that RSPCA approve of. And soon after, I began to notice that people walking past me with their dogs were listening in to what I had to say. I realized that they were so interested to what I had to say, I began speaking really loudly, and I wanted everyone to know the truth. This was where I really found my voice for the animals, and soon after, I was actually on the front cover of the West Australian. This particular action gained a lot of interest by the media, and they wrote a 2-page article about my animal rights activism. A few months after this protest, a fellow activist and myself came up with a random idea for her to dress in a cow onesie and go into the supermarket. It was a very last-minute idea, but we decided to make a sign saying "Watch Dominion" on YouTube, and we headed off to the supermarket. I remember on the way to the supermarket, we had completely forgot that it was a weekend. The supermarket was actually due to close in 10 minutes' time. However, we rushed over and we filmed her inside the supermarket. This video was her in a cow onesie, and she was mourning the murdered animal bodies in the meat aisle. The store was completely empty, however this video had a massive impact. It ended up gaining national and international media attention. The Lad Bible even wrote an article about it, and it received well over 1 million views on Facebook alone. These two events led to a really great idea. We decided to do the cow onesie protest again inside the supermarkets. This time, as I was filming my friend, I decided to speak out and let everyone know about what is happening inside farms and abattoirs. I would speak out really loudly inside the supermarkets so everyone would stop what they were doing and listen to what I had to say. And it worked so well, and we gained more media attention to the message. Soon after, I did my own cow onesie protest. I was the activist this time, dressed in the cow onesie, and I wanted this particular action to highlight the atrocities that are happening in the dairy industry. I held a sign explaining what happens in the dairy industry, and I did a speak out as well inside the supermarkets. Closer to the end of the year, I came up with an idea to dress as a slaughterhouse worker and go inside the supermarkets. My friend and I organised for this protest to happen on Christmas Eve. Over the couple of months of planning, I got my costume together and just bought it all online, and that's when we also came up with the idea to play the screams of animals inside slaughterhouses. This particular action was the most powerful action I've ever done. It received an enormous amount of attention. It was a really powerful protest, visually, and of course, you could hear the animals screaming for their lives. I also did numerous speak outs for this protest as well. I hadn't planned anything, and I never really plan a speak out when I do my actions. I always find a good moment to speak out when I feel is important to do so. A few months after that protest, in 2020 last year, I decided to do a disruption in an Australian football match. A few members of Direct Action Everywhere and myself planned for me to disrupt the stadium and run onto the football field. This action was to bring light to the right to rescue and how it is absurd to prosecute innocent people for exposing animal cruelty and rescuing animals from hellholes. This action led to me to be arrested and charged with trespass. So I also got multiple media attention on the animal rights message each time I went to court. I decided it was a great idea to protest outside of court. So what we did for this protest is we played the sounds of animals screaming inside slaughterhouses, and I put tape over my mouth holding a sign saying it's time to listen to the animals. I did so many other protests throughout the year, and I found that speaking loudly and creativity were both driving factors into my success for these protests. I decided to get really creative. For example, one protest, I wore a pig's mask and dressed as a pig slaughterhouse worker selling human flesh. I also did another similar disruption to my Christmas Eve protest last Christmas Eve as well. However, that time I was actually holding a real pig's head to make it more confronting, and I think it's really important for people to see the victims of their food choices and see the reality of it, as horrific as it was to actually hold someone's head. There are so many other protests that I have done, and if you would like to check them out, just follow the link below in the media section and you can see all of the news stories that have covered my protests. So a lot of you are probably wondering, what is next? What do I have planned for this year? Well, unfortunately, I've only had time to do one protest earlier this year for Australia Day, which was also a very successful protest. At the moment, I'm working ridiculous hours to save up a lot of money to hopefully use for my activism for the rest of the year. I'm hoping that in a few months' time, I can take some time off work and dedicate my time to animal rights protesting. I don't have anything specific planned at the moment, but I really would like to get back into it as soon as I can. I hope you enjoyed listening to my journey about my time as an animal rights activist. I really hope that this has allowed you to find more confidence and ease into doing your animal rights activism, or it's given you a guide to actually getting involved in animal rights activism. I really hope to see you out there.